So good morning. My name is Andrew Cowling. I'm the Senior Channel Marketing Specialist at PFU EMEA Limited. Thank you for joining me on my first webinar working from home. I hope you're all keeping very well under these very challenging circumstances that we face at the minute. And I hope in other countries it's as sunny and nice as it is outside today. It certainly helps to provide an extra room in the house for when the family's getting fractious and kids are fighting. We just tried to get them to do the Joe Wicks exercise routine, and it ended up more of a punching match. But as I say, thank you for joining me. The webinar today, really, I wanted to not necessarily jump on the bandwagon. I know that everyone's pushing out things around remote working, but we've got some very pertinent messages that we can talk to you, our channel partners, about when it comes to advising your customers around how best they can maximize their efficiencies and their productivities from their home office. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to look at some of the top level stats around the general transition that workplaces have been seeing to remote working, and that's before we've having the circumstances we have at the moment. I wanted to talk about some of the advantages and barriers to remote working. Of course, what does scanning and dedicated scanners, what do the benefits that they have to play in this whole conversation? What are perhaps some of the different opportunities that you could be talking to your customer base around? And then finally looking at ScanSnap and particularly the IX1500 and what the difference there is in terms of being the smarter way to work, and the conversation again that you can have with your customer base. Come on, technology, home networks and all that. So in terms of general stats around remote working, globally, we now know that over 60% of all companies have a remote working policy. That may be as much as we would like you to work from home, we would encourage you to work from home, or it could just be a day a week that we would like you to work from home. So 60% of all companies have that remote working policy. And of course, that will differ across staff depending on who really needs to be in the office and who can work from home. We then have a stat of 70% of people, again globally, who do work remotely at least one day a week. And I should have actually got some stats around how that compares perhaps with 10 years ago, but I'm sure we've seen a huge transition as companies embrace the idea of remote working and the benefits that they can offer. Interestingly, remote working is a lot more common amongst younger staff. I suspect that this is to do with them almost demanding the transition to remote working. But also, I guess the typical landscape of companies that graduates are moving into are those that are perhaps demonstrating more modern ways of working and technology, and as such, they're attracting that younger dynamic of people. But you see here, 50% of 45 to 60-year-olds typically may work from home, against a figure of 70% of 18 to 34-year-olds. So this is age groups that said that they take advantage of working anywhere. The question was asked by Merchant Savvy around what do you think is the biggest advantage of flexible working? And there's not really any surprises here. You can see some slight differences across the different age groups as to what they would typically say, but it's quite interesting to see that the work-life balance as people get older are getting more concerned about, and how can they better, I suppose, maximize the opportunities that they may have with children, with exercise and looking after their health and so on. So you see the percentage increases around the work-life balance scenario. The ability to work anywhere and be more productive is very strong among the younger age group, but it's fairly similar across all categories questioned. The commute into the office is very prominent for younger age groups. I don't know whether that's perhaps because younger age groups are actually using public transport. Perhaps that adds to the stress and commute, although judging by the traffic on the roads at times, I'm surprised that it may well be the car journeys as well. But the stress and commute, quite a big difference here between younger age groups and as you get older. We spoke a little bit about the work-life balance in terms of exercise and hobbies. Again, that's very prominent for younger, and saving money on travel. Understandably, as your wages hopefully go up, then there's more thought around what am I doing with my money? How am I saving it? Can I put more in pension? So it's people starting to think perhaps a bit more about their money. So some of the advantages of flexible working, remote working, quite interesting to see some of those arguments. And of course, I guess the other big one around the stress of the commute is perhaps some environmental concerns around pollution. And again, with COVID-19, we've seen very much the impacts that less cars on the roads and less public transport being used, the massive advantages that that's had when it comes to cutting down on pollution. In terms of one of the main advantages for businesses themselves is that saving of money. So there's a figure we have here of $4.5 trillion. That's the savings per year in the US as a result of remote working. And we're looking forward here to 2030. And that's looking at things about improving productivity, reducing some of those overheads, and increasing agility, increasing the ability to be more efficient, essentially. Unfortunately, I have to mention COVID-19, and that is really forcing the workplace to turn their ideas and their scheduling, perhaps, of remote working potential on its head, and really try and reassess the working environment, not just from an employee level, but from an employer level, to think about, are they equipped to do what they need to do from home? It's suddenly been a very fast, very rapid transition to working from home, and our businesses prepared. I think it's going to be very much a survival of the fittest, with a lot of perhaps smaller companies out there, those that are better equipped to respond to the changing workplace, changing demands, are going to sort of shine, I guess, over other companies that might not necessarily have those tools and facilities in place. Some of the barriers to remote working. So a lot of companies will not necessarily be so keen to roll out the idea of remote working. Some of those could be internal systems. Some of those could be internal perceptions. And of course, employee perceptions of it as well. So a key one here is employee isolation. We've been having a lot of conversations internally about remote working and how people do find that lonely after a time. You might not necessarily be at home, and you might not enjoy the fighting children, but at least that's there. It's some noise. So there is a problem around isolation of employees and that social impact that may have. Communication problems, that could be due to internal systems. It could just be due to training that staff need to try and change their habits of working. So there might be staff that are used to catching up in the office that now need to make more regular contacts when they're at home. The security of data, always going to be paramount in this day and age around who has access to data, who is looking at it, who is printing that out, who is editing it, and so on, and ultimately making sure that that's not falling into the wrong hands and you're looking after your customers' data. Access to paperwork, of course, a very, very prominent thing when it comes to trying to find information, share information, and collaborate better. And all these, I suppose, in turn lead to diminished productivity. The key, I think, we have here in the opportunity, the underlying opportunity, is the general transition that workplaces are finding that is combined by younger people wanting to have that change, companies starting to look at that change and perhaps reduce some of their overheads when it comes to office space, utility bills and so on, but also the current circumstances of today mean that this is going to have long-lasting effects. Hopefully, a lot of companies will see that actually we've never liked the idea of remote working, but crikey, that has worked. Our productivity's gone through the roof. Our collaboration between staff members is massively improved. So this will hopefully have the knock-on effects where companies will say, right, actually, we need to carry on with this full-time or part-time during the week, where we do embrace those new ways of working. But of course, it takes time to transition. And whilst there are these overriding benefits of home working for certain people, it will take time. And of course, there's a number of things that employees need to provide to help facilitate that move. I think another eye-opener of recent developments is just how well equipped are companies with regards to making sure their staff have the tools they need to work from home. I've heard of many stories of companies that have sent staff home and they've basically plundered the office of equipment. Everyone's been loading up cars with larger monitors, desk chairs, you name it, because they don't have that set up at home. So it's a very big eye-opener, not just for employers, but also employees that realize I just can't work at home if I've got my partner here and I have my children here and we're all needing to separately work. How well equipped are we? Not just from a furniture perspective, but from a hardware perspective, and of course also the tools to bridge that infrastructure gap. So employers really need to think about VPN, conferencing tools, laptops. I've heard there's a huge surge, many disties on back order with laptops. The ability to e-sign documents. Documents have to go digital. We can't now walk around desks and say, could you just sign this for me, please? If documents need signing, that has to be done digitally. How can we make sure that everyone accesses a shared folder? And of course, the opportunity for us is the side of scanning and making sure that documents are going digital in the first place. So hopefully some areas that you can be talking to your customer bases around. Lots of opportunity out there for employees and employers when it comes to conversations around improving what they have. A fairly standard slide that's been going around the ethers for a while, but looking at how paper is an expensive overhead, not just in terms of direct costs such as equipment, but also some indirect costs when you could be looking at the time it might take to retrieve records, the cost it may have of postage, the cost of storage. So a lot of direct and indirect costs of paper, and we have other webinars where we look a little bit more around the problems of working with paper and how document scanning can eventually aid that. Compliance is something we can't forget, and this should be a very strong part of any messaging that we want to put out over the coming weeks around remote working. We have to make sure that more than ever that paper or even digital copies are compliant with GDPR, with Freedom of Information Acts, or any other legislation that's relevant in your country, in your region. We need to make sure that we are adhering to all the privacy laws around documents and what information we are storing on people. Quick look at a paper to digital workflow, very much paper-based, office-based, multiple copies are printed out. A lot of this is habit, a lot of this is routine. You might receive an order and then someone thinks, oh, I need 4 copies of that, I'll print that out, I need to give 1 to accounts, I need to give 1 to operations, I'll keep 1 for myself just in case, and then I'll have a spare. So multiple pages of a document. I think the stat still is a typical document is printed 19 times. And then we look at the digital side of things. So looking at how an order is scanned, that may then go to someone to e-sign. We have a copy that might be saved on a network folder. We still have this habit of having an original to archive, but a lot of that might be from a retention policy period where you need to keep physical hard copies. A lot of that has changed to retention periods online, but there still is a need for a lot of document types, contracts, purchase orders and so on to keep the original copy as a hard copy. So looking at some of the benefits of scanning itself, I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted here, but dedicated document scanners are really the smarter way to work. That's how we really position our ScanSnap brand. We have some great content around why do people need a dedicated scanner in addition to their multifunction device. So a lot of people now might be saying, I have a multifunction device at home. Why do I need a dedicated scanner? We have some very good content around that we can help plug into some of your marketing vehicles. It's all around processing. So how can we scan documents and then make those documents useful? How can we extract that content and make sure that's useful? So through ScanSnap, we have the ability to process into Office applications like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Very much from a purchasing, mail, invoicing perspective, all those accounts payable staff that are perhaps now at home trying to get their head around how can we make things more efficient and more productive, then document scanning will help to scan to workflows, to systems where they can then be put into the approval process and paid quickly and without any hassle. General communications and distribution, all of these aid the productivity, the efficiency side of companies that are looking to change the way they're working. Of course, we have the reduced cost perspective, and this links back in with the idea of offices saving money on office overheads by cutting down on the storage space that they have of documents. And of course, the retrieval side of things, that's probably where things really do ramp up when it comes to employees trying to find documents, trying to look through filing cabinets of HR records or contracts. So just retrieval by doing a simple keyword search, you have the document. And of course, you also have an increased quality side because you're using data better. There's better analysis of data. You're making those more informed decisions around activity. So just a tick list really of some of the key benefits of scanning. We've covered some of these. Disaster recovery we've not mentioned so much, but it's very key now when it comes to theft risks, fire risks, flood risks, to make sure that you have backups of documents, the legal admissibility of documents, record retention through scanning. You can apply retention periods that say, do I need to still keep this document or can I now get rid of it? Green is a big message, and of course the saving money, saving cost perspective. So we have that content, we have that information that we can help you push out there. So I just wanted to talk around some of the opportunities, I suppose, that we have the ability to work with you on over the coming weeks to try and push the message around dedicated document scanning, the ScanSnap brand, and how we as organizations can help with this shifting landscape. So I see this really as two ways. That there's obviously the message to employers, and we very much acknowledge that our scanners and ScanSnap are very much a business product, but for the first time we're starting to have a look at how this is also becoming a consumer product. A lot of employers, like I mentioned earlier, are having to say to their employees, here is what we can offer you, and employees are now having to think around what else do I need in my house to enable the rest of the family to work comfortably and work efficiently. So it's a double-pronged message that I think is very relevant to both businesses but also consumers. So we have a target audience of companies with their home workers, and as we know, most of the workforce is now working from home, so they have to be given those tools to work productively. So it's all around with ScanSnap, how can we equip and empower companies' workforces to work as productively as before, if not more productively. We have a lot of functions within companies that are very paper heavy, and a lot of that workforce, as I say, like your accounts payable, like perhaps your HR functions, who are now working from home, and they're not used to that. They just perhaps don't have the space to do things like they did back in the office. So to keep processes running, to keep workflows running, and the business to run efficiently, there has to be a way to help them capture information and manage those documents. We have a lot of dispersed teams now that exist across multiple locations. So where perhaps they were getting together on a Monday morning and sitting down and talking creatively around how they can better collaborate and share information and get projects moving, we now need to think of how can they share those things remotely. So a lot of the tools that I mentioned earlier, but also the scan and share functionality, perhaps around maybe sort of graphic ideas for a creative project. You might be an agency that now need to better capture and share ideas quickly. We have some messaging around the education vertical, not just aimed at the teachers, because they're now having to think from a curriculum perspective, how can I homeschool? How can I make sure that I am providing my pupils with enough relevant content to help them learn from home? So that could simply be scanning in a document that might include some maths work, and then disseminating that out to pupils via a learning platform. So excuse me, how can they be interacting with their systems to make sure that that content is getting out there and is reaching people that it needs to be? We then move really to the more of the consumer message around home working. So we have very much an end user message to the home worker, so to the employee around how can we better help facilitate your working life. But we also have that message to families that are realizing that child A and child B don't have the equipment they need to. So one of the key messages around ScanSnap is, particularly the IX1500, is this is a multi-license device. There's the ability to set up multiple profiles, multiple color icons. So Dad's is sending off documentation to the office via his profile. Mum is sending off information to her office or to the school via her profile, and the kids are also interacting on that. Not just to school, but there's also a very strong message here around sharing with other family members who might be isolated, who might be quite scared and missing that daily contact that they perhaps were having physically with children. Children now have the ability to scan in their homework, their painting, and push that to grandma. So some very different messaging that we perhaps haven't had traditionally, but I hope you can see that there are some quite interesting aspects that we can talk about. And then the other key one here is as companies return to office life, we know that 65% of companies still really haven't embraced that digital transformation journey. But as companies return to office and realize the benefits that were had through remote working, the benefits that were had through moving from paper to digital, there is that going to be that conversation around taking that next step towards document management. And that could be when conversations around RSP range and RFI scanner range come into effect. So some quite interesting changes to dynamics that could help with some conversations when it comes to automating processes within companies when they're back. Quick slide on our range of scanners. I'm sure you all know very well. We have webinars where we're looking at in depth our brand new FI800R. So this is very much customer facing ID capture. We've got two new mid-volume production scanners for very heavy archive application environments, but I won't go too much into these because we haven't got time. Well, we probably have got time, but I'm sure you have other things to do. The IX1500 itself, so this is a fairly new ScanSnap machine, and we're very much looking to position this into those remote working conversations that we're having, but also hopefully we can have with you to your customers. One-touch approach. So I mentioned earlier about the multiple buttons. You have a multi-license possibility with this scanner where, as I say, individuals can set up profiles. This could be scanned to a cloud account so that other staff members can access information. It could be scanned to a smart device. So if you're at home and you want to just push something to your child's smart device, then you can do that through here. It could be scanned to grandma's email. So lots of different profile possibilities. You'll have the scan to editable applications that you can set up across. You can do up to 30 of those profiles on the one machine. ScanSnap will recognize the documents that you've scanned and can route those accordingly, but I've got a quick slide on that in a minute. I've got ahead of myself here and spoken about it being a home for everyone already, but again, that's just talking about the multiple use possibility and the touch screen with the profile buttons. We have something called ScanSnap Home that we bundle with the IX1500 product, and it's all around intuitively adapting to how you work, understanding how you work, suggesting file names accordingly, suggesting routing accordingly, and just helping you to better organize what you're doing with your daily paperwork routines. One big change that we're having with ScanSnap Home this month is that we are now bringing in the quick menu into the functionality. So the premise of the IX1500 is typically you would choose where you want the document to go first and then press the scan button. Where the quick menu comes in, and a lot of you might know that from other ScanSnap models, is that with the quick menu you scan the document first, quick menu pops up and says, what would you like to do with this document? So it's just a couple of different ways that people can intuitively use the IX1500. It's very much around learning. It's very much about intuitive, hassle-free use. So you can throw documents of mixed sizes through, it'll automatically crop, it'll automatically take out any deskew or remove blank pages, and just helping the user to embrace scanning as quickly and as pain-free as possible. And it's got a design that works. You have a very compact footprint. The ADF tray will close down. It will then power up automatically when it's not being used. So it complements any environments that this is going to go and sit in. It's got a 50-page ADF. It's scanning documents at 30 pages a minute. So that's both sides at the same time. And as I say, it can cope with a mixed batch of documents from receipts right up to A4 and even A3 size. We can do some stitching through the software. I have a proper webinar on the IX1500 if we want to go into more depth around the software and some of the other automated features, but I'm wary that we're nearly at 10 o'clock. ScanSnap Cloud, this is a fantastic message that we can put out around our IX1500 and IX100 products. These have a piece of routing software bundled with it called ScanSnap Cloud. So you don't even have to press destination buttons when you're using ScanSnap Cloud. You can literally set up the profile in advance to tell the scanner that if you were to see a receipt, then send that to my expense system. If you were to see a business card, send that to where I typically would store my information that links to my CRM. If you are to see a document, then send that to Dropbox, and so on. So another very strong message for people that are new to scanning, that this makes things so much easier. Automatically set documents to go to a cloud account. Very, very easy, very simple to use, very easy to set up. So that comes bundled with the IX1500. If you don't know already, then we have just over 1 month left of a great promotion where we are bundling well, not bundling, but we're allowing end user customers to get an IX 100 after they've purchased an IX 1500. So 12, it was 13, I can only see 12, but number of countries that this is operating in. Apologies if you're not there, but the message is if you've got a strong reseller, or if you are a strong reseller within a country that you think actually this remote working opportunity is huge, I'd love to get involved, then speak to your account manager and we can work with you to perhaps take on board the promotion and push that as well to the people that you're communicating with. But yeah, buy an IX 1500, claim a free IX 100. We have some mechanics around this, but essentially I won't go too much into it, but the end user customer would have to come and claim at our website a period after purchasing, which is 30 days, and we would then fulfill that order ourselves to direct to the end user customer. We have imaging rewards, so please make sure you're logging your products and collecting bonus points, particularly for the IX 1500, which will be to the end of March, likely also for April. We have bonus points on our S1300i product and also our network N7100 device. If you want to refer a colleague, then you can earn extra points as well to get them to sign up to the system. I think the fundamental message is we have to look at these desperately sad times with an opportunity hat on. We feel that there is some very strong conversations to have around remote working and how ScanSnap particularly is the smarter way to work for businesses and individuals and families. We would love to work with you to develop content, push that content out through your social media channels, through some of your communication vehicles. So please come back to me, come back to your account manager. We are working on content and more than happy to share that with you. In terms of product content itself, we have 3 syndication companies that hold material on the IX 1500, as well as all our range and accessories. So if you want to be helped to be plugged into this content that will automatically feed into your site, then let us know. We have a portal called the Imaging Channel Program that's got a lot of great enablement tools, so sign up to that. And that's probably, yeah, that's it from me. So thank you, as I say, for your time. Keep safe, and the message from us is business as usual, and we're just looking forward to helping you over these difficult months. So thanks ever so much, and speak to you soon. Bye bye.